Hey everyone, Andrig with Andrig's Aircooled Technology back for part 2 of the video about fans and kind of what I'm doing. So one of the things I didn't really talk about on the early VW and Porsche fans was some things that I had challenges with on Doghouse. Um, Quite interesting is they look exactly the same in terms of the Doghouse fan versus the early fan, except for it's a little taller. So the early fan had a 28, that's a Porsche, let's use the early fan, had a 28 millimeter wide blade, not counting obviously the thicknesses above and below. And the Doghouse fan has a 34 millimeter blade, not counting obviously the thickness above and below. So you're like, oh, it's just a bigger fan, but it's exactly the same. It's kind of interesting, and most of it is identical. The thing that is a little different, here's a blade from the Doghouse fan that I removed from another one that I had, not this one. This is the one I tested with. Kind of have to destroy it to get one of these out, but the blade is a little different. But it is interesting how essentially, you know, you kind of can see it there. Hopefully, you know, it's got a curve to it. It's not a dramatic curve, and neither is that. But it is a little different. It's you know, both of them have this kind of taller part on the leading edge of the blade, so there's the air is coming in this way right here, and it's got this taller part, and that kind of follows the curvature of this right here, of this part, and it follows that curvature. And so that's actually a really important piece of this. Plus, the blade angle is really important, as it turned out. I really struggled with the Doghouse fan, getting it to perform as well relative to the original fan as I did on the early. The early, you know, right out of the box, it was just better. And it's not that my replacement for the Doghouse fan wasn't better from the beginning. It just wasn't nearly as much better. The Doghouse fan shroud has a real interesting challenge in it because of the oil cooler part, which is on the 1-2 cylinder side. That internal structure doesn't allow you to really, it doesn't give you as much room as in the early fan shroud. So it's really easy to kind of get a fan that works better because there's just more room in there to play with in terms of the fan. There's less room in the Doghouse, even though they went to a larger fan. Obviously, the actual width of the fan shroud itself is still the same. The width this way is still the same in terms of, but the internal structure is different. And that difference on the 1-2 side, which is where it captures the air that it then redirects over to the oil cooler, you know, actually reduces the amount of area you have to work with in terms of the fan. So that was one of the reasons. So I couldn't make just simple increases in it. It was still better, but it wasn't really where I wanted it to be. So that led me to doing a few things around both blade and blade angle. I did a ton of tests with blade angle. So the blade angle is actually different on even the early fan replacement and, you know, next generation fan, and on the Doghouse. Everything I've learned kind of on the Doghouse, I reapplied back to the early. So as I was optimizing this, the other thing that I did was really change this angle, this curvature, and essentially change this front leading curvature and height on the blade to match a different curvature that I have in this fan. And that really opened up the fan a lot in terms of being able, you know, opened it up in terms of performance of the fan. So reduce the pressure, reduce the turbulence on the incoming air at the top, and it improved quite a bit. So I went through a couple iterations of that, just, okay, that's an improvement. You know, if I change it a little bit more, does it improve it more? Does it change it a little more? Does it improve it more? So kind of find that sweet spot for the Doghouse fan. And then today I finished up, because I did that and improved this to where, relatively speaking, it was on par, you know, or very, very super close to the improvement I was getting on the early fan. I kind of locked this one in, and I'm like, okay, but I'm wondering now, will those same improvements to the early fan actually improve it as well? So I made those changes, finished testing that today, and it does. So now the difference between them in terms of relative to the OEM fan is still there's still a gap there, because I did improve the early fan and the Porsche 356 fan a lot. One of the really kind of cool things in terms of optimizing the last optimizations I did on these fans is that the velocity ring now makes a bigger difference, which is a really great side effect. So you got two different velocity rings here. These are from Awesome Powder Coat. Shout out to Clark, who makes these at Awesome Powder Coat. These actually, they work fantastic. This is the one for the Doghouse. This is the one for the early fan shroud and works with the Porsche fan shroud as well. And we'll talk about fan shrouds in a future video, because I've tested in a bunch of fan shrouds and kind of know how they behave, and even know how well they fit or don't fit and that kind of stuff. So these are great. You definitely should be running these, and with the next generation fan, these make an even bigger difference, which is really cool. So you can really get huge percentage improvements in the airflow and the cooling capacity of your system with these. And these work with the OEM fan. They just don't work nearly as well with the OEM fan as they do with my lightweight next generation fan. So, and there's going to be a new, I talked about the mounting system a little bit in the previous video. I'll talk a little bit more about this. This is what the production version of the hub will look like. This is it'll be blackened to protect it from rust. But what I'm going to add is another piece too. This is the spacer that sits on the back of the alternator or generator. So the hub actually sits on this, obviously, and this actually goes over the top of that shaft and sits down in there. And that's where the bearing is. So this sits, you know, on the bearing and raises that up. What I have found is, depending on the brand of alternator, or in particular alternators, in particular, but generators are pretty much all the same, is that the height of that spacer is dramatically different. And if the height of that spacer is different, that means the height of the fan is going to be different. That means there's a wide variation in where that fan's going to sit and potentially rub on one side or the other. So I did choose to manufacture my own. It's really simple to change out. You just slide off the other one, just slide this one on, and just like, might as well just show you, just like so, it just slides right on, done. So it'll be a really simple thing to do. It won't be any rocket science. And then of course the hub will go on, and then the fan will go on the hub, and then we'll have a spacer, a spring washer, and a nut. So the mounting system is going to be really good. The last thing I wanted to kind of show is, here's what, a stock part of the backing plates. There's two backing plates, right? There's one on the outside and one on the inside, and you can kind of see how thick that is. And that's mainly to allow air. So you see this slit right here, air to come through, and this is how the fan will draw air through the alternator or an and/or generator. So that's an important piece, and you need to have that slot in there. Otherwise your alternator or generator could overheat. So in order to free up space in there to have a better fan, I did a different backing plate, and this is a 3D printed version. That's what I've been testing. This is the one I've been testing with. And it's just got an open area down here instead of kind of a flap, because I made it, significantly thinner. So in order to have enough airflow come through here, so you don't end up with an overheated generator or alternator, I needed to open this area up. So just opened it up. It's pretty straightforward. So that'll come. It'll look different than obviously this. This is just done in PLA, and I'll probably print these in either a glass-filled or carbon-filled nylon for production. And so they'll be black color-wise. And of course, all you really see of this is the outer edge of this. So you'll either have if you don't have a black fan shroud or whatever, it'll just blend in if it's black, if you got kind of stock looking stuff. If you've powder coated or you're painted your fan shroud different color, obviously you either live with a little black ring around that, which could be a nice accenting piece depending on the color, or you could paint this if you wanted to. Painting a carbon filled or glass filled nylon, it does require a special paint for it to bond, or it will come off. But you can paint it if you need to get it to match. So that's going to be all the pieces, and basically I'm done now with all the testing. Got all the results across Porsche, early VW, Doghouse fan shroud, and all the different aftermarket fan shrouds as well. So results came out really nice, and like I said, with the velocity rings, the results are really tremendous. So you can't really go wrong if you have this fan and a velocity ring. Your cooling capacity will be increased a lot. So, and I'll be publishing those numbers once I release the product. I've got the stuff all in spreadsheets and graphed and everything. So eventually those will become public, and you'll be able to see kind of the results. And I'm excited about this. I did get my 3D printer for producing these products, and I'm working through kind of the learning curve of using this new 3D printer, all new software to control it, manage it, and get the prints to come out right. But I have successfully printed one of these fans with it in just PLA as a test run. There was some things that were kind of not real great with it that I need to optimize still, but we're getting there. So hopefully we'll start experimenting with printing these fans in the next week or so, and then as I produce those, we'll get this back in inventory, and people will start being able to buy these things, and it'll be great. So I think everyone will be really, really happy with the results that I'm getting of these fans, and be really happy with the product. Then we move on to other things like a whole cooling system, etc. And I'll talk about, since I did so much testing with various fan shrouds, I will do a video later on about all the various fan shrouds and kind of which ones perform and fit well versus others that don't perform and fit as well. So it is kind of interesting. I'll give you one little tidbit of information. All of the aftermarket 36 horsepower style with no heater outlet fan shrouds have fitment issues. All of them do, and they all actually have the fan inlet. The size of it is wrong. It's actually too small compared to the Doghouse OEM fan shroud. So it does limit a little bit the cooling capacity. Even for the OEM fan, is lower than it should be, based on that fan inlet being more restricted. So not really sure why they got the dimensions wrong, but they got a lot of dimensions wrong, so I'm not totally surprised about that. So but we'll talk more about that in a future video. And really appreciate all the business. I appreciate you guys watching these videos, and the interest, and hopefully we'll get this product back out to you soon, and you'll be able to start putting these on your engines, and I think you'll be really happy. So thanks again for all the business and everything you've done to support me, and all the guys out there that have written about my stuff and used it and given positive feedback. I really appreciate that too. So thanks, and we'll talk to you later. Bye bye.